Hello and welcome to Building Tomorrow's Insurer, where we dive into what's new, what's great, and what is changing in the world of insurance. And if you are spending any time in insurance right now, you'll hear the same thing over and over again. AI is a priority, innovation is happening, transformation's underway, and yet sometimes we see very little of it is actually getting into production. And still, lots of insurers are really stuck in this gap between pilot and production. And so today's episode is very much focused on that gap and why it exists, why does it continue to persist, and what is it actually going to take to close it. And today I could not be more thrilled to be joined by James Benham. He's the founder and CEO of JBK and Terra, and I'll get him in a second to give us a little bit of context on both those businesses. And he has spent the last 2 decades building technology inside insurance companies, and has been very open about the fact that the problem isn't always technology, it's the decisions and the incentives and the way structured organizations are structured to deliver change. And so, James, maybe I can hand over to you to give us a little insight into the two businesses, how they complement each other, to give everyone a little bit of a backbone and a bit of context before we dive into the conversation and unpack all that AI has to offer.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it, Nigel. I'm James Benham, CEO of JBK and Terra. I've been in business now at JBK 25 years next week. April 16th is our 25th anniversary. I bootstrapped.
I have to send you a birthday cake, James.
I know, right? I think 25 warrants that.
Sure does.
Good party. Started it in my dorm room at what you would call uni. We would just call it back in college at Texas A&M when I was a senior, and decided that my internship was great, but I didn't want to work there full time. And so I said, let's start a business. And I went to my dad and I went to one of my good friends from high school who was an exchange student from Argentina. And I said, hey, let's start a business. They said, hey, rock and roll, let's go for it. So we scrapped together a few $1,000 and a couple computers and got to work building software for anybody that would pay us money. And I was fortunate to get hired by an insurance company in 2004. So, I'd spent 3 years wandering in the wilderness looking for my niche. And in 2004, I found it. So it was 3 good years of learning about business and software. And so ever since 2004, JBK has been in insurance, building bespoke systems for carriers, TPAs, MGAs, pharmacy benefit management, ancillary service providers, brokers, you name it. I mean, we've worked for everyone in the stack since the days of dial-up. And I just want to point out, our first office had a dial-up modem in 2002.
And for those of those young listeners that don't know what dial-up is, go to ChatGPT. The irony of going to ChatGPT and asking what dial-up is, and ask what the sound sounded like, and maybe you'll get have a bit of insight to James's first office.
Yeah, exactly. So, because I really have been a lifelong technologist. I love tech. When I was 11, I went to an engineering magnet middle school. And they started teaching computer science with a Trash 80 and a GW Basic, and I fell in love with it. And then I went to an engineering magnet high school, and they moved on to a lot of other programming languages and got this thing called the internet because it wasn't around in middle school. It came around in high school, and we'd never heard of the internet, and we got it and we loved it. We'd heard of it. We knew it. We knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, by the way. And I just have really enjoyed technology. I really enjoyed building a lot of software. Insurance provides limitless challenges. And so JBK has always been a solution provider. These days, we do a lot of cloud migrations still, because there's still a lot of on-premise tech. We're doing a lot of AI implementations for implementing LLMs and machine learning models, predictive models into insurance workflows. We do a lot of maintenance of old applications. We do a lot of new app dev, and then we do a lot of data services. So what we would call ETL work, extract, transform, load. When you pull that together, that's what we've been doing for, as a company for 25 years, and insurance for 22. And then I had a product line in construction for a while, for 12 years. I kind of landed in that through insurance and ended up building a really fun product called SmartBid and we got 250,000 companies around the world to use it, including some huge ones in the UK, by the way. I think that's where you live, and we had some great UK clients, we had great Aussie clients, we had great clients in Hong Kong and Dubai. Some of the largest builders in the world bid their work out through us. We got in through insurance because of builders' risk policies, and I sold that company in 2018, and then in 2020 decided to build a lightweight system for work comp first organizations. Really wanted to focus and specialize in work comp. We started in claims, so we built a full stack claims system for workers' compensation, and then built a policy system, and then built a. Okay, so we're really deep on work comp. Work comp is in the United States very, very challenging, 50 state regulators. And so it's been a good space for us to play in, serving SIGs and SIFs and small TPAs and workers comp. And so that's what we do today. They're two separate companies, but I'm CEO of both, and I spend all day, every day solving problems around claims and policy, and having a lot of fun focusing on adoption. Of course, the hardest thing to do is not write code. It's get people to use the software you build. So that's most of what I do is study human behavior and how do we get them to touch it and use the software.
Totally.
So that's it.
It's unbelievable, James. And with all of that context you have over that last 25 years, I'm going to get you to try and distill it down for me. I'm going to get you to distill it down in trying to aim for like a 90-second context. You spend an enormous amount of time with insurers globally. And so you have like the most wonderful vantage point in which I think I'd love to hear your perspective on the most popular AI proof of concept use cases that you're testing for, and why very succinctly you think that insurers tend to get stuck in this kind of pilot purgatory.
Well, insurers have always gotten stuck in pilot purgatory. So this is not new.
Nothing new.
This is not new. I mean, my favorite movie, Nigel, and I'm going to give you one guess. It's by a wonderful actor named Bill Murray, who's a genius.
He is a genius. But my movie knowledge is not great, so I'm gonna fail here, James.
Okay, it's called Groundhog Day.
Oh, I know Groundhog Day. Yeah, I know the movie.
So, my daughters are both teenagers, and they know that Dad always watches the movie Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day, and then usually one more time during the year. And what I love about Groundhog Day is they just repeat the same day over and over and over again, and eventually he finally perfects his day until he escapes the loop. And I feel like a lot of insurers have always been in Groundhog Day, but the thing is, they tend to make enough money, sometimes so much money, that there's not a massive incentive to escape the loop, because it's the consequences aren't terrible. I mean, whether you make a decision A or B, you're still going to make good money. Insurance is a wonderful industry, and I love my clients. I work very, very, very deeply with several big insurance companies, and I get to be at the executive table with a lot of their execs, and we get to make decisions together, and so they've always been in trial purgatory. When it was new on-prem tools, or when the iPhone came out, they would be in trial purgatory with mobile apps, and then we went into trial purgatory with cloud conversions and which cloud provider to select, and then people said we're never going to go to the cloud, and then now they're all in the cloud. And now there's some insurers are saying absolutely no AI usage, and some are saying use all the AI. Like it's wild how different the adoption curve is around AI. Yeah. But getting from a trial to full scale deflection is really hard. Like in particular, you can get a group of 20 to use a tool, but getting 2,000 requires monumental effort. In particular, like a really phenomenal relationship between the CEO and the COO and the CTO or CIO who's driving the project. Like you got to have that trifecta has got to be super tight, like really dialed in on the same page, not playing politics with each other, agreeing on what they're going to do. And ops has to want it. Like they really do have to want it. And then the technology has to sell it, and the CEO has to believe in it. Like it's really got to be this magical triangle. Otherwise, every initiative, all of them, will eventually land and say, okay, well, it worked in that group, or it didn't work in that group, or but it never really scales to the whole organization. So I have seen that a lot over the years, and I'd say that AI is no different. It's following the same pattern of everything I've seen over the last 25 years, except that enough executives are using it personally and they're freaked out enough by it. And what would happen if they don't use it and their competitors do, that I'm seeing a faster adoption curve than other tools that I've typically worked with.
And would you say, obviously over that couple of decades of experience you've had, when you were to go last 12, 18 months, when really you could probably argue the last 6 months, the models have got good enough to actually make meaningful change? They were good before, but there's been feels like with kind of this 4.6, it's really kind of stepped up. What would you say has actually changed in the last 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. If you're a technologist in insurance, you've been using AI for 7 to 8 years.
Yep.
We've been implementing machine learning models that were predictive models.
Yep.
And I think it's really important to understand that there's really two sides to AI implementation. As far as like the core product, there's a third side that we can talk about, and that is AI writing code. But you have workflow automation and decision support. Those are the two things that you're generally implementing AI for, because most problems in insurance can be solved with traditional input processing and output, forms, data structures, and reports. That's most of computer science, is building systems that do those things. A lot of our time and energy has been spent refining it to where it's really easy to use, right? Now, when you're looking at AI implementations, it's decision support and workflow automation. Well, decision support's been going on. We had our first big implementation 8 years ago of a machine learning model that predicted the outcome on claims. And then we moved to machine learning outcomes that predicted the likelihood of certain things being ordered during a claim process. And then we moved on to decision support on renewals and on policies. And so that kind of machine learning's been around since the 1950s. We're in the 75th year of using machine learning, because you have traditional statistical models, math models that don't really adapt well with time and data, versus a predictive model that's using machine learning. It can adapt in real time to changing conditions. And so the whole goal is to find seeking alpha, right? We're looking for we're looking for better than average returns by looking for correlation and causality, right? What things cause other things to happen, apparently. Well, what things are correlated to other things happening? Like in Star Trek, the red shirt guy always dies. Those are correlations. And then what's causality? Does the red shirt kill a guy? No, it doesn't. It's just a little quirk in Gene Roddenberry's first Star Trek universe. And the same thing can be said for comorbidities and work comp claims. Okay, well, what's a high work comp claim? Well, okay, smoker, diabetic, overweight, whatever. Right? Those things typically are correlated with high claims. Does not necessarily mean they cause that claim to be high. And so we've been tackling that for a while. Mm-hmm. What's really improved, and you're right, the last 6 months have been banana land. I mean, for any of us who work in the field, that's been
mind-blowing.
An invigorating pace of change.
Invigorates a nice way to put it. I think it's maybe a constant state of anxiety of moving fast enough, doing enough, pushing the company enough, pushing our people enough, trying to get our people up the curve of change, etc. All of those things.
Yeah, it's made some haphazard, and I will say that. Like we have to really fight the temptation to be haphazard, because in technology we have the greatest fear that all of us have is obsolescence. All of us. We just don't want to be rendered obsolete, or as the British would say, rendered redundant.
Redundant.
You just don't want that. That's like the worst case nightmare. And so I think that's why you see technologists pushing so hard on this, is you don't want to be the last one at the table. And there's quite a few technologists who are digging their heels in and saying, we're not doing this.
And so take us in, and just to extend that a little bit, James, take us into the boardroom. Take us into the boardroom conversations you're having with those execs, of seeing the speed of change, understanding that we had traditional AI, and we moved into this world of kind of generative AI, and therefore, and that is impacting organizations both internally and externally, the products they sell and in internal efficiencies. So take us into those exec boardroom meetings that you're having when you're making technology decisions around this technology.
Yeah, it's interesting when you actually sit down at the table with the CEO, COO, CFO, and in particular, probably one of the more overworked executive team members right now is the corporate general counsel. I mean, you would not believe how much time I've had to spend with GCs, peeling through data usage and rights, privacy, non-training agreements, abuse monitoring waivers that you have to get them to waive their abuse monitoring on your usage, because what's happening is everyone's adopting these tools so fast that carriers and brokers and clients are clamping down and saying, you cannot train with our data, you cannot look at our data, you cannot monitor with our data, which means you've got to opt out of all training, and you have to opt out of all abuse monitoring, and then you have to trust your providers to not do it. And so I'd say the biggest conversation in the boardroom is about legal risk, because nobody wants to run afoul of a carrier or a market saying, you're not allowed to write with us anymore, we're not going to supply reinsurance, we're not going to supply your primary coverage, or if you're a TPA, you can no longer administer the claims, or whatever that comes around to. So there's a lot of conversations around legal. There's a lot of conversations around workflow automation, because the reality is, at most insurance organizations, and this is just my anecdotal guess, I do not have broad industry data to back this up. I just know from 25 years of working in the space that about 20 to 30% of people do extremely clerical jobs in insurance, whether it's at a broker or a carrier or a TPA or an ancillary provider. They're doing clerical stuff. They're filling in forms, they're generating documents, they're sending notices, they're producing reports, and a lot of those tasks can be automated now. I also think it's important to note that this is like RPA supersized. Like, we've had robotic process automation for quite a while. We've already been able to automate a lot of these things. The difference now is that we have a much more intelligent brain driving the interface work and the form filling and the text analysis and the summarization. We've never been able to summarize stuff this well, ever.
James,
And so
sorry, John,
I think that's like one of the big things.
The big things. I just want to interrupt there, because I think there's something you touched there. I think there's a lot of confusion about often, especially in large insurers that have used a UI path or used kind of one of the big RPAs, and the difference between an RPA-driven workflow and an agentic-driven workflow. Can you give your take on maybe when a CIO asks you that question, which I'm sure you've been asked, kind of,
Yeah.
well, we do this today. We got this RPA today that we've set up with UiPath that we've been using for a decade. Why do we need to change that? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, it's adaptability, power. It's brain power. You're putting a high IQ brain. You're putting a brain that can pass an IQ test of the equivalent to the world's smartest human on top of the workflow engine that we've always had. If you look at, and I'll just give two examples. You look at Claude Cowork versus UiPath. And like, these are two things that are not conceptually on the surface, not that different, right? And I'm talking about traditional UiPath. Now, look, a lot of the RPA tools are now doing partnerships with the LLMs because they see the writing on the wall. They see that all the LLMs are creating agents that is essentially what an RPA bot does, right? Like, so if I've got an agent, I don't need an RPA bot. The agent is, recurring, can call tasks. I can call it. It calls itself on a certain schedule, just like an RPA bot was. It can be triggered by data elements, just like so there's not a lot. The difference is the brain. I mean, that's the difference is we used to say no a lot to things like, can you do X, Y, Z? Well, no, because that involves analyzing 500 pages of free text and rendering a judgment call. Well, now we say, yeah, we can actually do that. We're going to have to go to ChatGPT 5.2 to get the smartest trained model, right? Like 4.0 was okay. 4.1 was a lot better. And then, then you go to the latest versions of, Gemini or ChatGPT or Opus. Oh my gosh, for writing code. Incredible.
Opus is incredible. Yeah.
So, the difference now is the brain, and that's it. Is you've got an extremely intelligent brain that, again, we're not at the singularity yet. We don't. Well, by the way, when we actually hit the singularity, most of us aren't going to know until later. Yeah, because the singularity is going to keep itself on the down low because it knows it's going to freak people out. But that's the difference when I talk to people. I said, look, you can call it, you can trigger it, you can schedule it, it can automate tasks, it can log into websites, it can operate your web browser, it can operate applications, it can operate your computer, it can move files, it can push files, it can connect to API endpoints. The difference now is I can build API connections at will on the fly in real time. You can feed me an API spec, I can build an integration immediately in minutes. And then I can connect to it, and I can pump data there, and I can pull data back, and then I can build an interface, and I can, so that's because there's this really, really smart brain. And, I'm not sure if, honestly, like 2 categories of companies, I'm not sure what they're going to look like a couple of years from now. And that is the universal app builders, like I don't know what that space is going to look like. Because, typically these like super low codey solutions where you can build apps. Now I'm talking about Power Apps and all the Power Suite from Microsoft. I think Microsoft will win because it's super embedded. But you've got a bunch of these low code solutions that were designed before AI could write code. And then the second category, I'm not sure how they're going to be around, is the RPA space, because you have dozens of RPA solutions, and now ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, like all the big model owners, they own the brain and they use the brain to build the workflow tools. And so for me, I don't know, maybe it's almost game over on the RPA space because they don't own the brain. They're going to be calling the brain. And where they may be able to stick around is just the fact that they have so many installed bots that no one wants to rebuild and retest all of them. So that they'll maintain the space they have, or like Google released their own. Like this week, Google released an amazing open source model that runs on your local computer or your phone, and it's really good. And so what they may end up doing is installing these open source LLMs and essentially transplanting the brain behind their workflow tools. And so, I'm not going to say they're not going to exist. I'm saying I just don't know what they're going to look like. Because they need the brain. They need the brain that can read a web page and consume the content and then produce a summary and then generate a form and then adapt to changing forms. And RPA tools were decent at adaptability, but nothing like what you see with Opus or Gemini or ChatGPT.
It's so true. Excuse me. It's so true. And when these businesses are thinking about the trends, about what they should be thinking about and caring about when trying to transition into this world, something that we have a bunch of conversations around with our customers, and when we're sitting down with CIOs, it's prioritization is something really challenging for them, and often folks that haven't spent the last few years thinking about data and thinking about structuring data and making it usable, thinking about that first. There's some folks that are thinking about their workflows and process redesign, and then there's some folks thinking about the tooling and the tools and the putting Claude code or whatever it is into the organization. How do you advise kind of your customers when they're thinking around those 3 parts of a prioritization decision, which is data, process, and tooling? Kind of which should come first, which should come second? Is it nuanced? Can you what's your thoughts on that?
Well, if you left out the other part, people. I mean, retraining is a pain in the. I mean, that's probably
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is the people.
Yep.
You know, people process technology, right? People process
Yep.
tooling. You added data. There is a distinct role for a master record, a single point of truth, right? I still believe those need to exist,
Mhm.
and I will believe that until I am strongly convinced otherwise.
Okay.
So you got to sort out your data and where it lives, and you got to connect your data points together. Like that's been one of my biggest gripes about all industries, not just insurance, is that we don't properly connect our CRM with our operating system, like the actual core operating system, with our accounting software, with our we just don't properly connect all those things together. So you end up with 3 or 4 company records, and you end up with 3 or 4 records for everything, and then they don't sync and they don't work, and then no one can give definitive intelligence on what's going on in the organization.
Mhm.
So I'd say sort your data out first, because otherwise, as my mama said, garbage in, garbage out. And then, actually understand if you still need a process. Like I've seen this a lot. Remember, there's 2 categories that we're dealing with largely in AI implementation: workflow support, workflow automation, and decision support. And if you take a process you shouldn't be doing anymore, like I got a great example. There are some states that used to require that you print and mail a notice when there's a change in a policy or when something happens in a claim. And they now no longer require that. But the insurance company or organization still sends it. So the first question should be, do we still have to do this? And then, do we still have to do it this way? And then, how do we reduce steps and make it more efficient? Because otherwise, if you take a really crappy process that achieves the wrong outcome, like if you make a crappy process faster, you just suck faster.
Mhm.
And so no one wants to do that, right? Like you actually can accelerate losses if you get better at the wrong outcome. And so I think that's the other really important part to this, Nigel, is saying, okay, first, do we still have to do this? How do we get our hands around it? How do we get the people retrained? Okay. All right. Now that we know we still have to do this, how do we shorten the number of steps involved? And then how do I take any manual work that a data clerk would do and do it with a bot, so we can take that clerk and train them up in one of the key positions that we need, because we're actually short on some really important skilled positions that we can train these good people for.
Do you think insurance companies are going to be bigger or smaller organizations in 10 years?
Smaller.
By what kind of percentage?
Per dollar of premium. They may stay the same size that they are right now in people, and just grow in premium count but yeah, I think they'll be smaller per dollar of revenue or per dollar premium. Depends. They may, again, employee headcount may level out, right? Because we have a problem. This is why people are like, the AI apocalypse on people and hiring, which I don't necessarily buy into, because we're struggling to find really quality, talented people still. And you look at the jobs numbers that came out yesterday. I mean, there's really strong jobs numbers right now, and there's a lot of automation going on. So I'm like, we still need skilled people. I think but when you look at like dollars per revenue, that's the important metric. I think that we're going to figure out a lot of ways to do more with the same number of people.
Yeah,
because we have to. We actually. I mean, I want to remind everybody, because I'm chairman of a university, chairman of the board of about a 10,000 student university. And 2 years ago, we hit a demographic cliff. And so you can see with, I think 26 universities closed last year. We
Wow.
have a population problem. We're not getting enough people to fill universities, and universities are closing down. If you look at construction, which I happen to spend a lot of time in, 2 skilled people are retiring for every 1 skilled person that's entering construction. So you have a huge problem there with skilled labor. And if you look at the really experienced adjuster ranks and really experienced underwriter ranks, which are kind of the workhorses of the insurance industry, the 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 experience is retiring.
Mm.
And so we've got, I think that's why I don't think it's like a reduction in the number of people. I think that we'll figure out ways so that we can kind of hold the line, because we also have a population issue that we're dealing with, and universities are grappling with it all over the place.
Like I called out in the intro, we've seen so much failure in the movement from pilot to production, not just in AI, but as you called out, like historically over time. And when you do a retrospective of those things, when you look at, okay, let's evaluate the success of the program we just tried to implement. Obviously, metrics are something that are important. Can you talk to me like what metrics do people care about? Is it cycle time? Is it cost per claim? Is it leakage reduction? Is it time to production? Like, what are the actual kind of metrics that boards care about and executives care about when implementing these transformation projects that kind of really define whether success happens and whether kind of more capital gets put to work?
Yeah, I mean, certainly productivity is the watchword of the day.
Yep.
And then accuracy of results. I mean, achieving the desired outcome. You know, if you're a carrier, your desired outcome is your combined ratio, right? So what they ultimately care about the most is, at the end of the day, because you know your loss ratios factor in all these other things, right? Your sales, general administrative expenses, and your cost of claims and everything else. And so you're looking at your basic ratio, your combined ratio, and then your productivity numbers, right? If you're a TPA, a third-party administrator, you often will get paid by the number of claim, by the claim, or by the hour, or cost plus, or there's a few different models out there, and productivity is going to really matter to you. Like how many policies can an underwriter underwrite? How many claims can an adjuster handle? Right? Like that matters. And does the policy or the claim achieve the desired outcome? Right? So any of the metrics that they're going to look at are going to be shaped around that. Are you achieving the desired outcome, and do you get there efficiently? And so you'll look at claim load per adjuster. You'll look at underwriting load, quote load and policy load per underwriter. You'll look at gross written premium. You'll look at the loss ratio of the policies you underwrite. You'll look at the cost per claim, number of claims, total incurred, and the claims side of the house, right? You could probably boil an insurance organization, whether it's an MGA or a carrier or a TPA, or brokers have a different set of metrics, right? You could probably boil it down into 6 or 8 metrics that are really wrapped around that space, and that's what you're really looking for. Are we being efficient with our time? Are we achieving the desired outcome? Because the last thing you want to do, because you can do this arbitrarily, you can just say, we're going to go on adjusters, we're going to go from 125 claims an adjuster to 200. And then guess what happens? If you don't do anything else but just jack the load up, what happens to your claims? The claim handling goes to hell, right? Now, if you make the process more efficient, then it doesn't necessarily, not necessarily. And the same thing with underwriters. Like, hey, underwriters, I want you to quote twice as many quotes a day. But there's no technology there to support decision-making and automation of analyzing all the documents. And then the same thing with brokers. I want you to increase the number of submissions. I mean, there's all these things you can do. But I think that's why you got to be a little careful to not set a goal like that, especially an efficiency goal, without a lot of technology to help back it up.
Yeah. So it's as with anything, right? As with anything, you need to maybe portion off a small section of something, implement, see the result, and then kind of change metrics to track over time. That makes so much sense. And I could literally talk all day, but I want to try and give something takeaway to the execs listening today. And there's something that's less kind of high level, a little more granular, and maybe to the thought of like a 30-day action plan, which is if you're an exec team listening today thinking we have not moved quick enough or not moved into this area enough so far, I'd love to hear like two things. Firstly, what should you stop doing immediately? And secondly, what's the one thing that you would kind of push the organization to move from pilot into production in the next 30 or 60 days?
30 to 60 days is a fast timeline to go.
Fast timeline. All right. Let's say, but if it's in pilot phase, you can maybe squeeze it through in 60 days. But let's say maybe squeeze it through in 60 days. Come on, we've got to be optimistic here. We're technologists. We always like to overpromise. Now, in terms of let's go 6 months. Okay, let's go 6 months. So what do you stop doing immediately, and what do you need to try and get in production in the next 6 months?
I'd say, well, I've always believed, because I'm a business owner first, entrepreneur first. If you believe in something in your organization, you have to put dedicated butts and dedicated seats and make it their only job. So if you're asking people to innovate in their spare time, it's not gonna work. And if you are asking people to automate their workflows, but you don't have a dedicated automation team, you're gonna be in big trouble. You know, you'll be the sea of unfinished pilots, because you've got to have a team that's used to stepping in, deeply evaluating a small group of people, documenting all of their tasks, chipping through and automating every single one of those tasks until you're out of tasks, and then reallocating, and then you work with ops to reallocate those people to other areas, right? That it takes a maniacal, daily, dedicated approach to workflow automation. Decision support is different. When you're implementing decision support technologies, you're coming in and saying, how do we make decisions? On this, like in claims, how are we making reserve decisions, payment decisions, closure decisions, settlement decisions? And how can we provide better decision support tools to make their decisions more well-informed? On policy, you're saying, how do we make better underwriting decisions? Those are different because you can implement those. You can work with a provider who just does decision support around that particular line of business. You can ship them a subset of your data. You can receive back the prediction models, and then you can display it and render it in the screen. And then most of your time is going to be spent on training. Whereas in workflow automation, the other half of the fence, it is a grind. And step number one is putting together a dedicated automation team and then giving them the political stroke to go around and interview people, which will freak some people out, and identify all the steps and all the Excel spreadsheets they use, all the paper they use, all the documents they use, all the manual steps they perform, and going in and automating those, and then looking at the people and say, okay, where we're going to use these folks, right? And so that's why. And inevitably, like, some of the best people kind of rise to the top during that process too. And say, okay, we're going to pull these people out, and we're going to have them work on the next automation project. And so there's some of that too. You recruit, but I think that's like is establishing the framework, the people, the team that does that, because you still have to support the core applications, the claim system, the policy system, the portals. You have a broker portal, client portal. Right, you have all the portals, you have the core systems, you have the APIs, you have the data services. All those have to continue to be supported while someone's going out and doing the workflow automation implementation. Someone's going out and doing the decision support implementation. It's hard. It's a grind.
It's hard. Yeah, it's and I think,
but that's the step though. You have to allocate cash and people, and dedicate them and let them only do that.
And is there anything you'd stop?
The politics, that'd be great. Politics is when you repeatedly lobby for something everyone's already heard before. Or you go around, rather than having open, honest conversations in groups, you know, because that's really where I believe a lot of this should happen, is you convene the right people together, and at the end of the day, you know, the leader makes the decision, but you factor in everybody's opinion, you move on. The opposite of that is what a lot of organizations get bogged down in, and that is one-off conversations between individuals who then really gin each other up and don't often bring together the best results. And so I'd stop that, right? Start meeting together as a team, start making decisions as a team, start dedicating resources, and preferably stop the politics. Like, I think you've got to acknowledge and accept that there's a chance that this wave of technology is going to impact every human on the planet. There's a reasonable chance. And we have to start acting like it, you know, so that's, you know, don't be in denial.
That is such a good place to stop. I think there is a reasonable chance that this technology is going to impact every person on the planet. I wholeheartedly agree. I think we will see. We will, and the world will change a lot if we have this pod in 12 months' time. I think we'll be talking about a lot of different things. But James, thank you so much today. I think kind of you've shown like such an enormous amount of experience through your 25 years that you've shared today, and like I really appreciate the time. I really do appreciate the time, and I wish you well for the rest of the year.
Thanks. And if anybody wants more information on me, my website is jamesbenham.com, B as in boy, ENHAM, jamesbenham.com. My book, Be Your Own VC, is there. Then you can link from there to JBK and Terra. You can find out. And I've got a podcast called the InsurTech Geek Podcast you can check out.
James, have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.